On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, Alex and I are joined by Jeff Garcia to discuss tomorrow's game against the San Antonio Spurs.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to remind you that your favorite podcast now is a newsletter. That's right. We're introducing the Locked On Knicks newsletter, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. It's 100% free at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com to get daily writing from Alex and I, our team of national writers, and of course, fantasy basketball expert Josh Lloyd. We are doing great. We are one of the most opened newsletters in the Locked On Podcast Network. We could get more subscriptions, so we'd really appreciate you guys subscribing. It's really good writing and sometimes a little bit different than the content in the podcast, so there is some overlap, but it's a cool thing to do to support the pod. If you really want to support us, though, be sure to subscribe, hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode, and do the same on your favorite audio platform so you ensure you always have us with you on the go. Leave a comment. What's your score prediction for today? I also want to remind you that today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gavin Schall. I'm your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. I also host the Saturday edition of the Locked On NBA podcast. I'm going to be joined by, of course, Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, and Jeff Garcia, the host of Locked On Spurs. A lot of Victor Wembanyama talk. How he matches up with Karl-Anthony Towns. Really, really fascinating matchup. I'm bummed. I didn't mention this during the pod, but I'm bummed Mitchell Robinson is missing this one because he did great against Wemby last year. We'll see how KAT holds up. We talk about it all now on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, as promised, we are lucky enough to be joined by the fantastic longtime host of the Locked On Spurs podcast, Jeff Garcia. Check him out on Twitter at, it's a legendary handle, Jeff G. Spurs Joan. Jeff, how's it going? Congratulations on having Victor Wembanyama in your life. You didn't have it good enough over the last 30 years. David Robinson, Tim Duncan, 5 championships. No, you just needed to get the next great generational player. I would be bitter, but things are going pretty well for the New York Knicks as well, so it's okay. The great news for you is not only do you have Wemby, but it feels like he's ascending to full-on super-powered alien ruler of the world status. Last 10 games for him now, 27.5 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 blocks, 48% from the field, shooting 39% from three, despite taking almost 10 of them a game, which is a lot more than KAT shoots, a lot more than Jalen Brunson shoots. He truly is a modern superstar. Oh, and he also has 29 blocks over his last 4 games. So that's where I wanted to start. I think the main area I'm focused on is how has he improved in a vacuum, and how has Chris Paul helped elevate his game? I saw a stat that they've connected on, like, Chris Paul's assisted Wemby for more threes than any player in the NBA has assisted another player for threes. What's new with him? How's he just wrecking the league at this point?
Yeah. Seriously, to take a page out of my nerdiness, he's ascended to like Super Saiyan 3. I mean, seriously. He's
Jeff, that's the reference I wanted to make. I didn't know if my audience would get it, but thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah. But I was asked by Locked On Celtics host John Corrales the other day, like, what's it like covering Wemby? And you know what? It's I get lost in the stats so much that I started having to focus in on just him as a person. Like, for example, he's still struggling with English. Like, every day, every game, he will look at us and be, oh, I never heard that word before. What is it? Like, he's so fixated on just learning more about the U.S. customs and everything. But as far as on the court, I mean, there are times, guys, I don't even know what to ask anymore on a post-game conference. I'm like, okay, I'm making this up. Okay, Wemby, you hit a quad double. What's new? Like, okay, sure. Yeah, not a problem. Okay, expected it.
I will say one thing you can ask about. When he was in Phoenix, he had like a 2,000-page Brandon Sanderson book with him. So maybe just asking about what he's reading. Seems like he's a big reader. I don't know. He's an interesting guy on top of just being an incredible player.
Yeah, he is. But, I think right now what we're seeing is just, him just evolving into what everybody projected him to be, that one-of-a-kind alien player. So you mentioned all those numbers right now, those stats and everything. We would even throw in that fastest to 200 3-pointers in a career over Steph Curry. That's just crazy. So, one, I like that he sticks to what he believes will work. So, for example, early in the season, a lot of criticism was thrown at him in the local media, among Spurs fans. You're taking too many threes, Wemby. You're taking too many threes. Stop it. You're 7'4". You should just be going in the paint. And he was asked about that, and he said, "No, I'm just gonna stick with it until I get it." And then he stuck with it, and now he's a threat. Why? Because he's always thinking about his competition. So during that period where he was chucking up threes and missing most of them, he was repeatedly asked, and one day he just said, "Yeah, because sometimes I'm gonna have a big man joker, and I can beat him out on the perimeter than I can versus in the paint. Oh, I can do this to him." So he's always thinking about how he can attack his opposition, the opposing team. So that's just great. As far as other areas of his game that's improving, his facilitating is getting a lot better. He's constantly looking for his teammates, and I think that's great and refreshing from a superstar that he is. Any knocks? We did a Lockdown Spurs the other day about Wemby's ascension, right? Mm-hmm. And we're saying, could he possibly already be entering like his peak years? Because how much further can this guy grow statistically? He's already averaging more than 20 points. His facilitating is great. He's hitting over like 57-58% shooting from within the 2-point line. Blocks, well, I mean, I don't need to tell anybody about his blocking ability. I mean, it just leads the league in blocks. He recorded, 10 blocks the other night? So where I could see him grow is one, cut off the turnovers. I get it. He's a superstar. A lot of the ball's going to be touching his hand, so that's more turnover possibilities. But maybe cut back on some turnovers. But then I'm just nitpicking guys after that. I'm like, okay, well, he can get to the free throw line more. Okay, well, he's already taking, 8, 9, 10 attempts a game. So I think the next evolution for him is just becoming that Chris Paul kind of personality on the court for the team, if and when Chris Paul ever leaves San Antonio. Even if it's to retirement for Chris Paul, he's just gone. So I think that where you can see his next evolution, it becoming more his team. He's already saying the buzzwords, my teammates, my team, we didn't win or we won. But I would like to see him become more of a leader. He's going to be his own guy. He's not going to be Tim Duncan, who was a quiet leader. He's not going to be Chris Paul, the very loud vocal leader. I think he's going to be probably the type of leader that's just going to talk to the guys off to the side in the huddle, almost maybe out of Tim Duncan's page. I could see that coming on for him. So I think that's the next evolution for him, because statistically, my goodness, guys, it's jaw-dropping. I seriously, and I know you told me what we're going to talk about before we hit that record button. And when you told me, I was like, what can I say about a guy who just does it all? I mean, what more can I say? I really can't. As far as Chris Paul is concerned, yeah, you're talking about the Wemby effect. How about the CP3 effect? They're just, first of all, sometimes I'm just honored and sitting there talking I'm talking to Chris Paul right now. I mean, there's times I'm sitting there like, oh my God, it's Chris Paul, CP3.
Yeah.
But he is so, just a guy, that wants to win so badly. He apologizes every now and then that he hopes his teammates aren't mad at him for constantly yapping at them. He goes, I know they're mad at me. He goes, I know they're upset with me. When he broke the record for the assist thing, he told all his teammates, he goes, I know I'm a pain in the you-know-what. I get it. So, but that's how much he wants to win. And I think that was missing from the Spurs team since Wemby's come on. So last year, basically, they didn't have that type of presence in the locker room, presence on the court. So, and I understand that the assist thing to Wemby to CP3 are high. You rattled out the numbers here. But it's not just that. It's what he's doing for other guys on that court. It's what he's doing for Steph Castle, what he's doing for Trey Jones, what he's doing for the team collectively. I mean, he's having a renaissance, as close as you can get to it. He's not Lob City CP3. He's not, that New Orleans Hornets CP3. But my goodness, he's averaging close to a near double-double. Not bad for a guy who's 39 years old. So he looks like he hasn't missed a beat, even despite being 39 years old. I hope he sticks around for the entire season and doesn't get waived and latches onto a contending team. I don't think that will happen. But if this young team can just soak every single ounce of knowledge from this guy, if and when he does leave the Spurs, that would be great for this team. So, yeah, I mean, They're what?
Yeah, I was
Hovering just
actually
they're hovering a little over 50, a little over 500 right now at 15-14 as we record. So I mean, technically, look, the bar was set freaking low. 22 wins last year. I mean, how much more? If they won 30, oh yay, success. But yeah, I like. I'm surprised with this team. Not just Wemby, not just CP3, but from Champagny to Vassell to Sohan to interim coach Mitch Johnson. Yeah, technically a rookie head coach. You know.
All right, guys, we'll be back with Jeff in just a sec to answer some of his questions on the New York Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Game Time. So, Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. It's also the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I normally talk about Knicks tickets when we talk about Game Time Picks. Today, I'm doing a little research on my alma mater, Arizona State. They're playing Texas in the college football playoff in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I was wondering, if I just wanted to go, if I lived in Atlanta hypothetically, and I wanted to go day of, how much would it be to get in the building? Game Time Picks has tickets for as little as $55. That's right, $55 to get in the building and watch a college football playoff game. That is absolutely insane. And it's all about the game time difference. Something that really separates Game Time is the lowest price guarantee. That means you find a lower price ticket on another site, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Guys, this is something, as someone with ADHD, has seriously plagued me. I've ended up spending hundreds of dollars, and all of that for stuff I wasn't using, and all of it could have been avoided with Rocket Money, because Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lowers your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved them. This is a crazy number, a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
Everybody's doing good.
Yeah, I was actually just saying to Gavin last night when I was looking at the FanDuel odds, I was like, the Knicks are favored by 9.5 points in this game, and I don't know if I totally agree with that. Like, I think that the Spurs team has shown a lot more this year, based just based off what I've seen of them, which is pretty little so far. Mostly just been keeping up with them from afar. But you touched on a lot of it, but I was going to ask about, what do you think has changed this year? What is this team gotten more comfortable with?
Right.
In terms of, the scheme and everything else, because it's been sort of a weird year. Like, I can see definitely the dividends of adding a Chris Paul, and then he hasn't come up yet, but like Harrison Barnes has been, playing well for them as a veteran signing that they brought in to, kind of bolster the team and, give that veteran presence, which is always necessary when you're trying to level up a team full of rookies and sophomores and, junior players. But it seems like this roster is just really well balanced. I don't know if I certainly didn't think Stephon Castle was going to be quite as good as he's been so far. And the 3-point shooting still a little bit of a struggle for him so far, but he's been a real impact player as a rookie. And I don't know that a lot of people saw that coming. Devin Vassell, is once he got back healthy, seems to be doing, what you would expect out of him now, being a solid extra scorer. In general, I just think up and down this roster, there's a lot of guys that can really, really play and, that complement a Wembanayama very well. Though you could argue that Wembanayama could fit on any roster in the league and, be totally fine because he's just that level of a talent. But how have things worked out so far for the Spurs, in terms of adding that veteran talent, but then also, you mentioned they have a rookie head coach, and it's due to really bad circumstances where
Yeah.
Greg Popovich has, been out for health reasons, and which could have created a sort of strain on the team, and created just a really tough situation for everybody. He's a universally beloved guy who's obviously been with the organization for forever, and yet they seem to be making this work, and as you said, are above 500, pushing towards last year's win total already, in December, which is impressive. And all in all, I think looking a lot more cohesive than they did a year ago when things were a
Right.
little more up and down with all the young talent.
Yeah. Look, honestly, the bar was set low. It really, really was. I mean, that's been a question among Spurs fans is what would be a measure of success? You only won 22 games last year. Is it 25? Is it 30? I mean, technically, that's more wins than last year. But I think this team on paper showed what it could be, and maybe we're seeing it now at the end of last year. Go back and look at how they closed out the last season. It was pretty impressive. They were at full power finally, and they were able to get some chemistry going, and they closed out last year really strong. And I think even Chris Paul said it recently, saying this team is a lot better than the record reflects. It has a lot of youth. It has a veteran presence, Barnes, and take a look. Look, as far as this young thing is, I think we need to get away from that because sure they're young by age, but they have guys that have already been in the league for a while now. Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones. These are guys that are not rookies, they're not sophomores. They're 3-4 years and more. So they already got that experience. I think they just needed an alpha. They needed that guy on the court. Not to say that Wemby's not going to become that, but he was just a rookie at that time. So I think that's where Chris Paul comes in. And overall, I still believe this team is still better than the record they got right now. Look, they got beat by a Philadelphia team they had no business losing to, and I think that just showed a lot of maybe at that time just some. Look, I mean, rookie mistakes by a rookie head coach. There's some lineup decisions that were made to the end that maybe I didn't agree with. So there's that. But they're still going to take their lumps, and we saw it against Philadelphia. But I think the big difference between last year and this year is they're closing out games strong. They're holding on to leads. I think at last check, and at home, if they're leading heading into the final frame, they're undefeated. Overall, I think they lost maybe 1 or 2 games. So they're way above 500 if they have a lead heading into the final period. So I think that's been a big change from last year is the ability to hang on to leads and close it out. It's to the point now where Chris Paul has even admitted that he's starting to see these young guys not need him on the court anymore. It feels like you're watching your kids grow up. Like, oh, look at them, they grow up. They don't need to hold my hand anymore. As the season moves on. So you're starting to see that from this young team, and I think that's just an excellent sign of the right direction. Julian Champagnie too. By the way, Brooklyn guy, so he's from Brooklyn. He said after the loss versus Philadelphia that he still believes that this team is moving in the right direction. He still believes that this is a better team than the record reflects. And I do agree with him. This team has some grit in it, thanks largely in part to Chris Paul. They have veteran presence, Paul Barnes and the rest of some other guys on the roster. And they're beating, this is a good stat I like about this team. Last year, this probably wouldn't have happened. They're beating teams they should beat. I know they lost to Philadelphia, but they're well above 500 against sub-500 teams. Last year, that probably wouldn't have happened. It would have been below 500. So you're seeing them win in situations that they should win. You're seeing them beat the teams they should beat. You're seeing them hang on to leads heading into the final frame and get the W. And they're taking on and bringing it to teams that are powerhouses in the league, whether it be your Dallases, your Houstons, maybe your Denvers. So, I think this team is evolving in the right direction. I still got them maybe at the for a nerd page here at the Kaioken, not yet quite Super Saiyan yet, but I think they're right there. I think they need to have that one battle like a Frieza.
Okay,
Or
would you say a Christmas Day game against the Knicks would qualify for that?
Maybe I gotta see how your Knicks are going. By the way, shout out Knicks. That's my second favorite team because that's my adopted home of New York City. So, but
Yeah,
yeah.
perfect transition, Jeff. If you have any questions about the Knicks, what do you want to know about our
Sure. Yeah, I do. By the way, I miss MSG and sitting up in press row, looking literally down like this at the court. Yeah, just looking down, straight down at it. But Brunson. I thought he would have a bigger year this year. He's been kind of up and down. What's the deal with him? And then two, why did KAT take a while to get going? Was it just simply a chemistry thing, or was it just simply maybe him still kind of bitter about what happened in the trade in Minnesota? So I guess Brunson and KAT, what would you think about their play this season?
All right, guys, we'll be back one final time with Jeff to talk about some final keys to this matchup. What factors will define who wins this Christmas Day affair? So the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points they will score. It's absolutely thrilling. I also am looking at the NBA odds for tomorrow. Your New York Knicks are a 9-point favorite over the San Antonio Spurs. Well, I don't think that's an unreasonable number, particularly with how well the Knicks are playing right now. And they've shown they can dominate teams even when Jalen Brunson is down. I just kind of have a feeling Victor Wembanyama, after scoring 60 last time he was at MSG, he's really going to, or whatever, he scored in the 40s. Jalen Brunson scored in the 60s. The point is, he's really going to get up for this game. I'm expecting a monster performance. I think it comes down to the last couple of minutes. So I would pick the San Antonio Spurs +9. You get that at -108. That is an excellent opportunity to make a little money on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yeah, I don't know. I think they've both been pretty amazing so far. There's maybe Jalen, of the two of them, I would say KAT is pretty happy with his start. I think Jalen's the guy who got off to the slower start, and a lot of it, which I'm curious to see if the Spurs do some of this with all the athleticism they have, the wings between Vassell, between Sohan, obviously Wemby being so flexible. Like the times he's been tripped up this year, and it was really early in the season, was against teams that would just switch the pick and roll between him and KAT. And early season, what that led to a lot of the times was Jalen sort of calling his own number and saying, all right, I'm going to cook. Like, you're putting a big guy on me. I'm getting to the basket. And while that was relatively efficient, it did not – that was sort of the Knicks formula like the last few years. It was, all right, Jalen ISO, Julius ISO. All right, RJ, you get a possession here or there. And the Knicks this year don't have to play that way. One, because they just have so much shooting and spacing across the floor, and their cutting has been so good. Two, they can just play out of the pick and roll. And if you want to put extra bodies there, you can just spray it out to a shooter and get an easy look. And it's not all on Jalen Brunson's shoulders. Additionally, you don't have Mitchell Robinson in there anymore, at least so far, to gobble every single offensive rebound, which is where it made a lot of sense to just say, we're going to ISO. We're never going to turn the ball over. And even when we miss, we have a 40% chance. Maybe that's a little high, but 35% chance of getting the ball back. The formula's changed. And I think initially it took Jalen a little bit to change with it. But I think I disagree with your characterization in the fact I'm sort of shocked between Jalen, while he's not statistically, I guess in terms of points per game, not having a better season this year. I'm shocked at how him and KAT figured it out. I think it would have been reasonable to say, all right, it should take 25 or 30 games for these two to find chemistry. They're the best pick and roll combo in the NBA. In terms of points per possession generated by a pick and roll between the two of them, they've been better than anyone in the league. And it felt like it was a preseason of them. I remember, Alex, we were coming on the pod and be like, yeah, they don't quite have the timing down yet. Jalen drew 2 on the ball and KAT was wide open. He didn't kick it to him. 3 games in the season, every single time Jalen's hitting that, he now they're at a point where they don't even have to make contact on a screen. The other night, they set a stagger for Jalen with McHale and KAT, and he went towards McHale, but essentially rejected it. Didn't take either screen. But then the defense was loaded up towards Jalen, and KAT just dives and Jalen just slips him a pass. And it feels like they've been playing together for 10 years. Like it looks a little bit Tony Parker and Tim Duncan-ish. So I'm pretty excited about where they're at. I don't know, Alex, would you agree with that? Like there are probably some things on the margins we've talked about for both of them that could be better, but I definitely can't say I'm unhappy with either of their starts.
Yeah, I think that it basically just early in the season, they were relying so much on one or the other of those two to kind of carry them while the team chemistry was figured out, and particularly on the defensive end. I would say that was the thing that took the longest to come around for the Knicks this year. I mean, other than Mikal Bridges too, I think that if you want to talk about someone who had lofty expectations set forth for them this year that took a while to come around, that's the guy. The guy that the Knicks gave up all the draft picks for and everything. Like, he was shooting really, really poorly from three for the better part of the first 20 games or more. And then lately, especially in the month of December, has really figured it out, is, shooting at the level you expect him to now at around like 40%. And, that's been a huge revelation for them. But I think that it was really the team concept just took a while to come together. They're playing offense even in a really different way. Like, I feel like they're more pick and roll heavy than they have been in the past. Although I say that, and yet I looked at the numbers the other week, and like, they actually weren't setting that many more picks, but it just feels that way because they're running more like horns actions. They're doing more where they're having the double screens with, KAT and Hart, and really trying to play this like 5-out brand of basketball. So it's just a little different. Like, they would start a lot of things with just a really hard Isaiah Hartenstein screen last year. And then Brunson would go into the paint and try to cook from there, and maybe would kick it out to a shooter. But, Hartenstein himself wasn't like a big time shooter. So like, sometimes you would get it to him at the elbow, around the free throw line, and he could facilitate some stuff that way. But it was kind of more the traditional pick and roll, sense of things, where he was trying to dive to the rim and whatever. Now you're having KAT pop on a lot of those, and just the team play 5-out all the time, which allows for a lot more cutting and a lot more creativity, which is fun. Also, the defense is starting to come around. So this was actually just tweeted like 20 minutes ago at the time that we're recording this. So I'm going to immediately give some praise to this stat pulled by James Edwards of The Athletic, who is the Knicks beat writer there. He said through the first 15 games, New York's defense had the second highest 3-point frequency and opponent 3-point percentage.
Oh, wow.
Over the last 14 games, their defense has been second lowest in both. So like, you can really start to see things coalescing here. They're starting to learn how to play defense with KAT at the 5, with all this wing talent on defense, trying to keep their rotations crisp, and, learning when to switch. And it also helps that like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges have been more locked in on defense recently. Mostly looking at Mikal for that one. Like, he was having, I think, a little post-Nets syndrome early this year, where he was still a little too lax getting around screens and stuff. So, we're sort of in the point now where they're figuring it out on defense. And if this team figures it out on defense, the whole year they've been a top 3 offense. Like, from the second that the first tip went off at the beginning of the season, they've been a top 3 offense, and that hasn't changed. So if the defense comes around and is a top 15, maybe if we're getting lofty, like a top 10 defense in the league the rest of the way out, we're talking about like a really, really elite team, because they've proven time and time again that no matter who the opponent, whatever, like, the offense is almost always going to be there. Save for maybe the one game against the Hawks, which was like the only one where I would say that the Knicks really looked like they had like their lunch taken, in that game. But other than that, they always find a way to score 110, 115 on you pretty much no matter what. So that's sort of the big thing for the Knicks so far. But Jeff, I think now's a good time to hop into overall, I guess, like, keys to the game and whatever. And for us, I think the one that we zeroed in on is KAT versus Wemby.
Sure.
I think that that's going to be the matchup of the day on Christmas. I think that, that's KAT has been on a super high level lately. I mean, even the other night, when he was playing the Raptors, it felt like sort of an off night, and he dropped 31. Or at least it felt like it was going to be an off night, and then he just finds a way to drop 31. He obviously had the huge game against the Timberwolves recently too. Like, he's really cooking. But we referenced the number already. Wemby is cooking as well. He's got like 30 blocks in his last 4 games, which is insane. and really has the length to disrupt a guy who likes to live at the perimeter. So like KAT usually is used to the fact that like, oh, I'm 7 feet tall
Right, yeah.
and I have a high release. I can get this over anybody. Not necessarily going to be the case against Wemby. So how do you foresee that going? And, if you were KAT trying to attack Wemby, not to, give notes to the
Yeah.
enemy here, but what would you be looking to exploit it if
Oh,
you were
man.
KAT going up against Wemby?
I think you're starting to see that page come out among defenses in the league, throwing multiple looks at him, small guys and big guys. But if you're a big guy, get physical with him, really get physical. You saw Andre Drummond get under his skin a little bit. You're seeing him kind of get a bigger target on his back with other bigs. There was another, I forget the game, but another big got into him and really was just pushing and shoving him. So I think that is one approach to that. Oh, and then of course in the Philadelphia game, Yasabule spoke afterwards and he said, he goes, I kind of know how to play Wemby because I played against him during the Summer Olympics and I know what he likes and he doesn't like. And one thing he does not like is physicality. So, well, I think that's something that maybe KAT can do. But I also think stretching Wemby away from the paint as KAT can do is another approach that if I were the Knicks, I would try to do with Wemby. But it's when you mentioned about the 3-point defense. As far as just looking from the outside in, if I was in the Knicks side, the 3-point shooting for the Spurs has been, Champagnie is probably the only lethal threat they have out there, and not for me, it's not mind-boggling, but for me, from the outside perspective, Wemby is probably your second best 3-point shooter on the roster. So they don't have a lot of gunners. Excuse me. You might throw their own Harrison Barnes out there as well, but they don't have a lot of deep perimeter threats, 3-point shooter snipers. They don't have that outside of Champagnie and, like I said, throwing Wemby. But that's it. So, if I'm the Spurs, I'm like, I got to connect on threes. I got to open up that thing. I mean, look, that's probably a big reason why they lost to Philadelphia. They, just couldn't connect on threes. But another matchup that I'm looking forward to, if we get the opportunity, is Steph Castle and Brunson. I'd like to see that matchup. Steph Castle has been relishing taking on the better guards in the league. He said it. He wanted Luka to start his pro career. He got it, and Luka cooked him. So there's that. But, I think I want to see that matchup, Castle versus Brunson. Also, too, just the big bright lights of MSG and the Christmas Day thing as well. This is a young team that's going to get its first taste at that type of level exposure. I want to see if they won't buckle into the hoopla of the Christmas Day game. They are excited from Vassell to Sohan. They all said that, this is awesome. We used to do this, watch games on Christmas when we were kids. Now we're a part of it. So we'll see if they don't wilt under the bright lights. So there's just so many storylines. And, of course, I'll be watching the Altcast, the Disney cartoon characters running up and down the court. So I think that'll be a fun treat for everybody. But, I expect a slugfest. But on the Spurs, I got to slow down Brunson. I got to slow him down. I think KAT and Wemby may cancel each other out. But for me, and if I'm the Spurs coaching staff, I'm looking at Brunson right away. And I'm like, how do we throw multiple looks at him from Castle to CP3? Sohan's probably going to get a lot of look on him as well. So, I expect the Spurs to really key on Jalen during Christmas Day game.
Yeah, I think everything you said, I'm looking at too. I'm curious to see, because KAT's been leaning a little more into driving to the rim recently. Like he's been doing that all season, but he's taking one less three this month than he did last month, and he's just been so like we just saw him, obviously very different threat, but we just saw him grind Kelly Olynyk into dust the other night, just like putting his shoulder down and just going and going and going until he gets under the rim. And I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to push Wemby off his spot. But sometimes you push Wemby off his spot and he's just so long, like he can still recover, still block the shot. So I'm wondering if KAT alters his approach, tries to take different angles. I'm wondering if they use KAT as a ball handler and try to screen Wemby off of KAT and bring up, I don't know, like OG Anunoby would probably be the best bet. Set a screen for him, have KAT almost operate as like a pick and roll ball handler and let him try to get to the rim that way. It's going to be really interesting the ways they try to get Wemby away from the rim. As for Brunson, like I love that you made the Castle point, because we've seen teams, and like most recently with Toronto, like mostly throw bigger guys at him. I was listening to like our friends over at Knicks Film School, and they were talking about like the average defender guarding a point guard has gone up like 2 inches over the last 2 years. And teams are really like, that's mostly about, or at least from a Knicks perspective, obviously, it's all about Jalen Brunson. We saw in the playoffs last year with Kelly Oubre, with Aaron Nesmith. And it would, I'm fascinated to see, because sometimes you'll see like smaller ball hawk guys like a Davion Mitchell, who are really high level defenders, and they'll get into Jalen and he'll just find a way, I think with his strength more than anything else, to get them off their path, still get to a spot, and then they're just not big enough to contest his shot. So I wonder if the Spurs lead a little bit more into Sohan, but Castle's such a revelatory defender for a young player. I'm curious to see how that goes. You've Wemby backing him up. But Jeff, this has been great, man. It's a lot of fun learning about the Spurs. Love the Dragon Ball Z analogies. Before we let you go, if people want to learn a little bit more about San Antonio, or maybe they're just big Wemby fans. Where can they follow?
Or they're just big nerds. Yeah,
they could just be big nerds. Yeah, look, our fans mostly are, so that would be good.
Just one thing real quick before we get into that, just real fast. Well, you're also looking at this too for the Spurs. They've recently gone through a starting unit change. Sure. I think they're still adjusting to that. At least in the last few games, they reinserted Devin Vassell into the starting lineup, and they took on the bench now Castle. So, and you're seeing that affect Castle lately, although he did a pretty good job versus Philadelphia, 17 points. But that's something to watch for in tonight's game, how the Spurs are still adjusting to redoing their starting five. Now, as for Locked On Spurs, check out Locked On Spurs. Seriously, guys, the Locked On NBA Network, just pick a platform. We're there. You want to go to iTunes? Sure. Locked On Knicks and Spurs are there. You want to go to Spotify? There too. You want to go to YouTube? Sure. I mean, we're everywhere. Just pick a platform where you find your favorite podcast and subscribe to Locked On Spurs. And of course, follow me on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone. And the newsletter, not just the Locked On Knicks newsletter. You got the Locked On Spurs newsletter. Sign up today. It's free. And a nice little companion piece to Locked On Knicks and Locked On Spurs.
All right, that's awesome. We'll catch you soon, Jeff. Remember, if you're listening in San Antonio, all the same applies to Locked On Knicks. You could find us anywhere. And I have a feeling, I was saying this to Alex, I see it coming down to a final possession, Jalen Brunson staring down Victor Wembanyama. Does he get his shot off? Does he get blocked? We'll find out in just a little bit on Christmas Day. Until then, be good. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Spurs.